the fifth book of Homer's Iliad. Part 1. The Argument. King Diomedes, by Pallas's spirit inspired, with will and power, is for his acts admired. Mere men and men derived from deities, and deities themselves, he terrifies, adds wounds to terrors. His inflamed lance draws blood from Mars and Venus. In a trance, he casts Aeneas with a weighty stone. Apollo quickens him and gets him gone. Mars is recured by Paeon, but by Jove rebuked for authoring breach of human love. Another argument. In Epsilon, heaven's blood is shed by sacred rage of Diomed. Then Pallas breathed in Tydeus' son, to render whom supreme to all the Greeks. At all his parts she cast a hotter beam on his high mind, his body filled with much superior might, and made his complete armor cast a far more complete light. From his bright helm and shield did burn a most unwearied fire, like rich Autumnus' golden lamp, whose brightness men admire past all the other host of stars, when with his cheerful face, fresh washed in lofty ocean waves, he doth the skies enchase, to let whose glory lose no sight. Still Pallas made him turn where tumult most expressed his power, and where the fight did burn. An honest and wealthy man inhabited in Troy, Dares, the priest of Mulciber, who 2 sons did enjoy, Idaeus and bold Phegeus, well seen in every fight. These, singled from their troops and horsed, assailed Minerva's knight, who ranged from fight to fight on foot, all hasting mutual charge, and now drawn near, first Phegeus threw a javelin swift and large, whose head the king's left shoulder took, but did no harm at all. Then rushed he out a lance at him, that had no idle fall, but in his breast struck twixt the paps, and struck him from his horse. Which stern sight when Idaeus saw, distrustful of his force to save his slaughtered brother's spoil, it made him headlong leap from his fair chariot, and leave all, yet had not scaped the heap of heavy funeral, if the god, great president of fire, had not in sudden clouds of smoke, and pity of his sire, to leave him utterly unaired, given safe pass to his feet. He gone, Tydides sent the horse and chariot to the fleet. The Trojans, seeing Dares' sons, one slain, the other fled, were struck amazed. The blue-eyed maid, to grace her Diomed, in giving free way to his power, made this so ruthful fact a fit advantage to remove the war-god out of act, who raged so on the Ilion side. She gripped his hand and said, Mars, Mars, thou ruiner of men, that in the dust hath laid so many cities, and with blood thy godhead dost disdain. Now shall we cease to show our breasts as passionate as men, and leave the mixture of our hands, resigning Jove his right, as rector of the gods, to give the glory of the fight where he affecteth, lest he force what he should freely yield? He held it fit, and went with her from the tumultuous field, who set him in an herby seat on broad Scamander's shore. He gone, all Troy was gone with him, the Greeks drave all before, and every leader slew a man. But first the king of men deserved the honor of his name, and led the slaughter then, and slew a leader, one more huge than any man he led, great Odius, Duke of Halizons. Quite from his chariot's head he struck him with a lance to earth, as first he flight addressed. It took his forward turned back, and looked out of his breast. His huge trunk sounded, and his arms did echo the resound. Idomeneus to the death did noble Phaestus wound, the son of Meon Boris, that from cloudy Turna came, who, taking chariot, took his wound, and tumbled with the same from his attempted seat. The lance through his right shoulder struck, and horrid darkness struck through him, the spoil his soldiers took. Atrides Menelaus slew, as he before him fled, Scamandrius, son of Strophius, that was a huntsman bred. A skilful huntsman, for his skill Diana's self did teach, and made him able with his dart infallibly to reach all sorts of subtlest savages, which many a woody hill bred for him, and he much preserved, and all to show his skill. Yet not the dart-delighting queen taught him to shun this dart, nor all his hitting so far off the mastery of his art. His back received it, and he fell upon his breast withal. His body's ruin and his arms so sounded in his fall, that his affrighted horse flew off, and left him like his life. Meriones slew Phereclus, whom she that never was wife, yet goddess of good housewives, held in excellent respect for knowing all the witty things that grace an architect, and having power to give it all the cunning use of hand. Harmonides, his sire, built ships, and made him understand, with all the practice it required, the frame of all that skill. He built all Alexander's ships, that authored all the ill of all the Trojans and his own, because he did not know the oracles advising Troy, for fear of overthrow, to meddle with no sea affair, but live by tilling land. This man Meriones surprised, and drave his deadly hand through his right hip. The lance's head ran through the region about the bladder, underneath the end muscles and the bone. He, sighing, bowed his knees to death, and sacrificed to earth. Phylides stayed Pedaeus' flight, and Tenor's bastard birth, whom virtuous Theano his wife to please her husband kept, as tenderly as those she loved. Phylides near him stepped, and in the fountain of the nerves did drench his fervent lance, at his head's back part, and so far the sharp head did advance, it cleft the organ of his speech, and the iron cold as death he took betwixt his grinning teeth, and gave the air his breath. Eurypylus, the much renowned, and great Evaemon's son, divine Hypsenor slew, begot by stout Dolopion, and consecrate Scamander's priest. He had a god's regard amongst the people. His hard flight the Grecian followed hard, rushed in so close that with his sword he on his shoulder laid a blow that his arm brawn cut off, nor there his vigor stayed, but drave down, and from off his wrist it hewed his holy hand, that gushed out blood, and down it dropped upon the blushing sand. Death with his purple finger shut, and violent fate his eyes. Thus fought these, but distinguished well. Tydides so implies his fury that you could not know whose side had interest in his free labours, Greece or Troy, but as a flood increased by violent and sudden showers, that down from hills, like hills melted in fury, swells and foams, and so he overfills his natural channel, that besides both hedge and bridge resigns to his rough confluence far spread, and lusty flourishing vines drowned in his outrage. Tydeus' son so overran the field, strewed such as flourished in his way, and made whole squadrons yield. When Pandarus, Lycaon's son, beheld his ruining hand, with such resistless insolence make lanes through every band, he bent his gold-tipped bow of horn, and shot him rushing in. At his right shoulder, where his arms were hollow, forth did spin the blood, and down his cuirass ran. Then Pandarus cried out, "Rank-riding Trojans, now rush in! Now, I make no doubt! Our bravest foe is marked for death. He cannot long sustain my violent shaft. If Jove's fair son did worthily constrain my foot from Lycia." Thus he braved, and yet his violent shaft struck short with all his violence. Tydides' life was sapped, who yet withdrew himself behind his chariot and steeds, and called to Sthenelus, "Come, friend, my wounded shoulder needs thy hand to ease it of this shaft." He hasted from his seat before the coach, and drew the shaft. The purple wound did sweat, and drowned his shirt of mail in blood, and as it bled he prayed, "Hear me, of Jove Aegiacus, thou most unconquered maid, if ever in the cruel field thou hast assistful stood, or to my father or myself now love and do me good, give him into my lance's reach that thus hath given a wound, to him thou guard'st, preventing me, and brags that never more I shall behold the cheerful sun." Thus did the king implore. The goddess heard, came near, and took the weariness of fight from all his nerves and lineaments, and made them fresh and light, and said, "Be bold, O Diomed, in every combat shine. The great shield shaker Tydeus' strength, that night, that sire of thine, by my infusion breathes in thee, and from thy knowing mind I have removed those erring mists that made it lately blind, that thou mayst difference gods from men, and therefore use thy skill against the tempting deities, if any have a will to try if thou presum'st of that, as thine that flows from them, and so assum'st above thy right, where thou discern'st a beam of any other heavenly power than she that rules in love, that calls thee to the change of blows, resist not, but remove. But if that goddess be so bold, since she first stirred this war, assault, and mark her from the rest with some infamous scar." The blue-eyed goddess vanished, and he was seen again amongst the foremost, who before, though he were prompt and fain to fight against the Trojans' powers, now on his spirits were called, with thrice the vigour, lion-like, that hath been lately galled by some bold shepherd in a field where his curled flocks were laid, who took him as he leaped the fold, not slain yet, but apaid, with greater spirit, comes again, and then the shepherd hides, the rather for the desolate place, and in his cot abides, his flock left guardless, which amazed, shake and shrink up in heaps. He ruthless freely takes his prey, and out again he leaps. So sprightly, fierce, victorious, the great hero flew upon the Trojans, and at once he 2 commanders slew. Hypenor and Astynous, in one his lance he fixed, full at the nipple of his breast, the other smote betwixt the neck and shoulder with his sword, which was so well laid on, it swept his arm and shoulder off. These left he rushed upon Abas and Polyidus, of old Eurymedus the hapless sons, who could by dreams tell what would come to pass. Yet when his sons set forth to Troy, the old man could not read by their dreams what would chance to them, for both were stricken dead by great Tydides. After these he takes into his rage Xanthus and Thoon, Phaenops' sons, born to him in his age. The good old man even pined with years, and one son more, to heir his goods, yet Diomed took both, and left him store of tears and sorrows in their steads, since he could never see his sons leave those hot wars alive. So this the end must be of all his labours, what he heaped to make his issue great. Authority erred, and with her seed filled his forgotten seat. Then snatched he up 2 Priamists, that in one chariot stood, Achaemon and fair Chromius, as feeding in a wood oxen or steers are, one of which a lion leaps upon, tears down and rings into his neck. So sternly Tydeus' son threw from their chariot both these hopes of old Dardanides. Then took their arms, and sent their horse to those that ride the seas. Aeneas, seeing the troops thus tossed, break through the heat of fight, and all the whizzing of the darts, to find the Lycian knight, Lycaon's son, whom having found, he thus bespake the peer: "O Pandarus, where's now thy bow, thy deathful arrows where, in which no one in all our host but gives the palm to thee, nor in the sun-loved Lycian greens that breed our archery lives any that exceed thyself? Come, lift thy hands to Jove, and send an arrow at this man, if but a man he prove, that wins such godlike victories, and now affects our host with so much sorrow, since so much of our best blood is lost. By his high valor, I have fear some god in him doth threat, incensed for want of sacrifice, the wrath of God is great. Lycaon's famous son replied, Great counsellor of Troy, this man, so excellent in arms, I think is Tydeus' joy. I know him by his fiery shield, by his bright three-plumed casque, and by his horse, nor can I say, if or some god doth mask in his appearance, or he be whom I name Tydeus' son. But without God the things he does for certain are not done. Some great immortal, that conveys his shoulders in a cloud, goes by, and puts by every dart at his bold breast bestowed, or lets it take with little hurt. For I myself let fly a shaft that shot him through his arms, but had as good gone by, yet which I gloriously affirmed had driven him down to hell. Some god is angry, and with me, for far hence where I dwell, my horse and chariots idle stand, with which some other way I might repair this shameful miss. 11 fair chariots stay in old Lycaon's court, new made, new trimmed to have been gone, curtained and arrased underfoot, 2 horse to every one, that eat white barley and black oats, and do no good at all. And these Lycaon, that well knew how these affairs would fall, charged, when I set down this design, I should command with here, and gave me many lessons more, all which much better were than any I took forth myself. The reason I'd laid down was but the sparing of my horse, since in a sieged town I thought our horse meat would be scant, when they were used to have their manger full. So I left them, and like a lackey slave am come to Ilion, confident in nothing but my bow, that nothing profits me. 2 shafts I vainly did bestow at 2 great princes, but of both my arrows neither slew. Nor this, nor Atreus' younger son, a little blood I drew, that served but to incense them more. In an unhappy star I therefore from my armory have drawn those tools of war, that day when for great Hector's sake to amiable Troy I came to lead the Trojan bands. But if I ever joy in safe return my country's sight, my wife's, my lofty towers, let any stranger take this head, if to the fiery powers this bow, these shafts, in pieces burst, by these hands be not thrown. Idle companions that they are to me and my renown. Aeneas said, Use no such words, for any other way than this they shall not now be used. We first will both assay this man with horse and chariot. Come then, ascend to me, that thou mayest try our Trojan horse, how skilled in field they be, and in pursuing those that fly, or flying being pursued, how excellent they are afoot. And these, if Jove conclude the scape of Tydeus again, and grace him with our flight, shall serve to bring us safely off. Come, I'll be first shall fight. Take thou these fair reins and this scourge, or if thou wilt, fight thou, and leave the horse's care to me. He answered, I will now descend to fight. Keep thou the reins, then guide thyself thy horse, who with their wonted manager will better wield the force of the impulsive chariot. If we be driven to fly, then with a stranger, under whom they will be much more shy, and fearing my voice, wishing thine, grow resty, nor go on, to bear us off, but leave engaged for mighty Tydeus' son, themselves and us. Then be thy part thy one-hoofed horse's guide. I'll make the fight, and with a dart receive his utmost pride. With this the gorgeous chariot both, thus prepared, ascend, and make full way at Diomed, which noted by his friend. Mine own most loved mind, said he, 2 mighty men of war I see come with a purpose charged, once he that hit so far with bow and shaft, like Cain's son. The other fames the brood of great Anchises, and the queen that rules in amorous blood. Aeneas, excellent in arms, come up and use your steeds, and look not war so in the face, lest that desire that feeds thy great mind be the bane of it. This did with anger sting the blood of Diomed, to see his friend that chid the king before the fight, and then preferred his Ablace and his mind to all his ancestors in fight, now come so far behind. Whom thus he answered, Urge no flight, you cannot please me so, nor is it honest in my mind to fear a coming foe, or make a flight good, though with fight. My powers are yet entire, and scorn the help tire of a horse. I will not blow the fire of their hot vapors with my flight, but cast upon the blaze this body borne upon my knees. I entertain amaze. Minerva will not see that shame, and since they have begun, they shall not both elect their ends, and he that scapes shall run, or stay and take the other's fate. And this I leave for thee, if amply wise Athenia give both their lives to me. Rein our horse to their chariot hard, and have a special heed to seize upon Aeneas' steeds, that we may change their breed, and make a Grecian race of them that have been long of Troy. For these are bred of those brave beasts which for the lovely boy that waits now on the cup of Jove, Jove, that far-seeing god, gave Tros, the king, in recompense, the best that ever trod the sounding centre, underneath the morning and the sun. Anchises stole the breed of them, for where their sires did run, he closely put his mares to them, and never made it known to him that aired them, who was then the king Laomedon. 6 horses had he of that race, of which himself kept 4, and gave the other 2 his son, and these are they that scour the field so bravely toward us, expert in charge and flight. If these we have the power to take, our prize is exquisite, and our renown will far exceed. While these were talking thus, the fired horse brought the assailants near, and thus spake Pandarus, Most suffering-minded Tydeus' son, that hast of war the art, my shaft that strook thee slew thee not, I now will prove a dart. This said, he shook, and then he threw a lance aloft and large, that in Tydides' curate stuck, quite driving through his targe. Then brayed he out so wild a voice, that all the field might hear, Now have I reached thy root of life, and by thy death shall bear our praises chief prize from the field. Tydides, undismayed, replied, Thou errest, I am not touched, but more charge will be laid to both your lives before you part. At least the life of one shall satiate the throat of Mars. This said, his lance was gone. Minerva led it to his face, which at his eye ran in, and, as he stooped, strook through his jaw, his tongue's root, and his chin. Down from the chariot he fell, his gay arms shined and rung. The swift horse trembled, and his soul forever charmed his tongue. Aeneas, with his shield and lance, leapt swiftly to his friend, afraid the Greeks would force his trunk, and that he did defend, bold as a lion of his strength. He hit him with his shield, shook round his lance, and horribly did threaten all the field, with death, if any durst make in. Tydides raised a stone with his one hand of wondrous weight, and poured it mainly on the hip of Anchises, where the joint doth move the thigh. 'Tis called the huckle bone, which all in shreds it drove, brake both the nerves, and with the edge cut all the flesh away. It staggered him upon his knees, and made the hero stay, his strook blind temples on his hand, his elbow on the earth. And there this prince of men had died, if she that gave him birth, kissed by Anchises on the green, where his fair oxen fed. Jove's loving daughter instantly had not about him spread her soft embraces, and conveyed within her heavenly veil, used as a rampire 'gainst all darts that did so hot assail, her dear-loved issue from the field. Then Sthenelus in haste, remembering what his friend advised, from forth the priest made fast his own horse to their chariot, and presently laid hand upon the lovely coated horse Aeneas did command, which bringing to the wondering Greeks, he did their guard commend to his beloved Deiphilus, who was his inward friend, and of his equals one to whom he had most honour shown, that he might see them safe and fleet. Then stepped he to his own, with which he cheerfully made into Tydeus' mighty race. He mad with his great enemy's rape was hot in desperate chase of her that made it, with his lance, armed less with steel than spite, well knowing her no deity that had to do in fight, Minerva his great patroness, nor she that raceth towns, Bellona, but a goddess weak, and foe to men's renowns. Her through a world of fight pursued, at last he overtook, and thrusting up his ruthless lance, her heavenly veil he strook, that even the graces wrought themselves at her divine command, quite through, and hurt the tender back of her delicious hand. The rude point piercing through her palm, forth flowed the immortal blood, blood such as flows in blessed gods that eat no human food, nor drink of our inflaming wine, and therefore bloodless are, and called immortals. Out she cried, and could no longer bear her loved son, whom she cast from her, and in a sable cloud Phoebus receiving hid him close from all the Grecian crowd, lest some of them should find his death. Away flew Venus then, and after her cried Diomed, Away, thou spoil of men, though sprung from all preserving Jove, these hot encounters leave. Is't not enough that silly dames thy sorceries should deceive? Unless thou thrust into the war, and rob a soldier's right, I think a few of these assaults will make thee fear the fight, wherever thou shalt hear it named. She, sighing, went her way, extremely grieved, and with her griefs her beauties did decay, and black her ivory body grew. Then from a dewy mist brake foot swift Iris to her aid, from all the darts that hissed at her quick rapture, and to Mars they took their plaintive course, and found him on the fight's left hand, by him his speedy horse, and huge lance lying in a fog. The queen of all things fair, her loved brother on her knees, besought with instant prayer his golden ribbon bound maned horse to lend her up to heaven, for she was much grieved with a wound a mortal man had given. Tydides that 'gainst Jove himself durst now advance his arm, he granted, and his chariot, perplexed with her late harm, she mounted, and her wagoness was she that paints the air. The horse she reined, and with a scourge importuned their repair, that of themselves outflew the wind, and quickly they ascend Olympus, high seat of the gods. The horse knew their journey's end, stood still, and from their chariot the windy-footed dame dissolved, and gave them heavenly food. And to Dione came, her wounded daughter bent her knees. She kindly bade her stand, with sweet embraces helped her up, stroked her with her soft hand, called kindly by her name, and asked, What god hath been so rude, sweet daughter, to chastise thee thus, as if thou wert pursued, even to the act of some light sin, and deprehended so? For otherwise each close escape is in the great let go. She answered, Haughty Tydeus' son hath been so insolent, since him who most my heart esteems of all my loved descent I rescued from his bloody hand. Now battle is not given to any Trojans by the Greeks, but by the Greeks to heaven. She answered, Daughter, think not much, though much it grieve thee. Use the patience, whereof many gods examples may produce, in many bitter ills received, as well that men sustain by their inflictions as by men repaid to them again. Mars suffered much more than thyself by Ephialtes' power, and Otus, Aloeus' sons, who in a brazen tower and in inextricable chains cast that war-greedy god, where twice 6 months and 1 he lived, and there the period of his sad life perhaps had closed, if his kind stepdame's eye fair Arabia had not seen, who told it Mercury, and he by stealth enfranchised him, though he could scarce enjoy the benefit of franchisement. The chains did so destroy his vital forces with their weight. So Juno suffered more, when with a 3-forked arrow's head Amphitryo's son did gore her right breast, past all hope of cure. Pluto sustained no less by that self-man, and by a shaft of equal bitterness shot through his shoulder at hell gates, and there amongst the dead were not he deathless, he had died, but up to heaven he fled, extremely tortured for recure, which instantly he won at Paeon's hand with sovereign balm, and this did Jove's great son, unblessed, great high deed daring man, that cared not doing ill, that with his bow durst wound the gods, but by Minerva's will, thy wound the foolish Diomed was so profane to give, not knowing he that fights with heaven hath never long to live, and for this deed he never shall have child about his knee, to call him father coming home. Besides, hear this from me, strength-trusting man, though thou be strong, and art in strength a tower, take heed a stronger meet thee not, and that a woman's power contains not that superior strength, unless that woman be Adrastus' daughter, and thy wife, the wise Aegiale, when from this hour not far she wakes, even sighing with desire, to kindle our revenge on thee with her enamoring fire, in choosing her some fresh young friend, and so drowned all thy fame, won here in war, in her court peace, and in an opener shame. This said, with both her hands she cleansed the tender back and palm of all the sacred blood they lost, and never using balm, the pain ceased, and the wound was cured of this kind queen of love. Juno and Pallas, seeing this, essayed to anger Jove, and quit his late-made mirth with them about the loving dame, with some sharp jest, in like sort, built upon her present shame. Grey-eyed Athenia began, and asked the Thunderer, if nothing moving him to wrath, she boldly might prefer what she conceived to his conceit, and staying no reply, she bade him view the Cyprian fruit he loved so tenderly, whom she thought hurt, and by this means, intending to suborn some other lady of the Greeks, whom lovely veils adorn, to gratify some other friend of her much-loved Troy, as she embraced and stirred her blood to the Venerean joy. The golden clasp, whose Grecian dames upon their girdles wear, took hold of her delicious hand, and heard it, she had fear. The Thunderer smiled and called to him love's golden arbitress, and told her those rough works of war were not for her excess. She should be making marriages, embracings, kisses, charms. Stern Mars and Pallas had the charge of those affairs in arms. While these thus talked, Tydides' rage still thirsted to achieve his prize upon Anchises' son, though well he did perceive the sun himself protected him, but his desires inflamed with that great Trojan prince's blood, and arm so highly famed, not that great god did reverence. Thrice rushed he rudely on, and thrice betwixt his darts and death the sun's bright target shone. But when upon the fourth assault, much like a spirit he flew, the far-off working deity exceeding wrathful grew, and asked him, "What? Not yield to gods? Thy equals learn to know. The race of gods is far above men creeping here below. This drave him to some small retreat. He would not tempt more near the wrath of him that strook so far, whose power had now set clear Aeneas from the stormy field, within the holy place of Pergamus, where to the hope of his so sovereign grace a goodly temple was advanced, in whose large inmost part he left him, and to his supply inclined his mother's heart, Latona, and the dart-pleased queen, who cured and made him strong. End of the 5th book, Part 1. The 5th book of Homer's Iliad, Part 2. The silver-bowed fair god then threw in the tumultuous throng an image that in stature, look, and arms he did create, like Venus' son, for which the Greeks and Trojans made debate, laid loud strokes on their oxide shields, and bucklers easily borne, which ere Phoebus pleased to urge on Mars himself in scorn. Mars, Mars, said he, thou plague of men, smeared with the dust and blood of humans and their ruined walls, yet thinks thy godhead good to fright this fury from the field, who next will fight with Jove? First in a bold approach he hurt the moist palm of thy love, and next, as if he did affect to have a deity's power, he held out his assault on me. This said, the lofty tower of Pergamus he made his seat, and Mars did now excite the Trojan forces in the form of him that led to fight the Thracian troops, swift Acamas. O Priam's son, said he, how long the slaughter of your men can ye sustain to see? Even till they brave you at your gates, ye suffer beaten down Aeneas, great Anchises' son, whose prowess we renown, as much as Hector's. Fetch him off from this contentious prease. With this the strength and spirits of all his courage did increase. And yet Sarpedon seconds him, with this particular taunt of noble Hector. Hector, where is thy unthankful vaunt, and that huge strength on which it built, that thou and thy allies, with all thy brothers, without aid of us or our supplies, and troubling not a citizen, the city safe would hold? In all which friends and brothers' helps I see not, nor am told, of any one of their exploits, but all held in dismay of Diomed, like a sort of dogs that at a lion bay, and entertain no spirit to pinch. We, your assistants here, fight for the town as you helped us, and I, an aiding peer, no citizen, even out of care, that doth become a man, for men and children's liberties, add all the aid I can. Not out of my particular cause, far hence my profit grows, for far hence Asian Lycia lies, where gulfy Xanthus flows, and where my loved wife, infant son, and treasure nothing scant, I left behind me, which I see those men would have that want, and therefore they that have would keep. Yet I, as I would lose their sure fruition, cheer my troops, and with their lives propose mine own life, both to general fight and to particular cope with this great soldier, though, I say, I entertain no hope to have such gettings as the Greeks, nor fear to lose like Troy. Yet thou, e'en Hector, deedless stand'st, and carest not to employ thy town-born friends, to bid them stand, to fight and save their wives, lest as a fowler cast his nets upon the silly lives of birds of all sorts, so the foe your walls and houses hails one with another on all heads, or such as 'scape their falls, he made the prey and prize of them, as willing overthrown, that hope not for you with their force, and so this brave-built town will prove a chaos, that deserves in thee so hot a care, as should consume thy days and nights, to hearten and prepare the assistant princes, pray their minds to bear their far-brought toils, to give them worth with worthy fight, in victories and foils, still to be equal, and thyself, exempling them in all, need no reproofs nor spurs. All this in thy free choice should fall. This stung great Hector's heart, and yet, as every generous mind should silent bear a just reproof, and show what good they find in worthy counsels, by their ends put into present deeds, not stomach nor be vainly shamed, so Hector's spirit proceeds, and from his chariot, wholly armed, he jumped upon the sand, on foot so toiling through the host, a dart in either hand, and all hands turned against the Greeks. The Greeks despised their worst, and thickening their instructed powers, expected all they durst. Then with the feet of horse and foot, the dust in clouds did rise, and as, in sacred floors of barns, upon corn winnowers flies the chaff, driven with an opposite wind, when yellow Ceres dites, which all the diters' feet, legs, arms, their heads and shoulders whites. So looked the Grecians, grey with dust, that strook the solid heaven, raised from returning chariots, and troops together driven, each side stood to their labours firm. Fierce Mars flew through the air, and gathered darkness from the fight, and, with his best affair, obeyed the pleasure of the sun, that wears the golden sword, who bade him raise the spirits of Troy, when Pallas ceased to afford her helping office to the Greeks, and then his own hands wrought, which from his fane's rich chancel cured, the true Aeneas brought, and placed him by his peers in field, who did with joy admire to see him both alive and safe, and all his powers entire. Yet stood not sifting how it chanced, another sort of task than stirring the idle sieve of news, did all their forces ask, inflamed by Phoebus, harmful Mars, and Eris eagerer far. The Greeks had none to hearten them, their hearts rose with the war, but chiefly Diomed, Ithacus, and both the Ajaces used stirring examples and good words. Their own fames had infused spirit enough into their bloods, to make them neither fear the Trojans' force, nor fate itself, but still expecting were, when most was done, what would be more, their ground they still made good, and in their silence and set powers, like fair still clouds they stood, with which Jove crowns the tops of hills in any quiet day, when Boreas and the ruder winds, that used to drive away air's dusky vapors, being loose in many a whistling gale, are pleasingly bound up and calm, and not a breath exhale. So firmly stood the Greeks, nor fled for all the Ilians' aid. Atrides yet coasts through the troops, confirming men so stayed. "O friends," said he, "hold up your minds, strength is but strength of will. Reverence each other's good in fight, and shame at things done ill. Where soldiers show an honest shame, and love of honor lives, that ranks men with the first in fight, death fewer liveries gives than life, or than where fame's neglect makes cowards fight at length. Flight neither doth the body grace, nor shows the mind hath strength." He said, and swiftly through the troops a mortal lance did send, that reft a standard-bearer's life, renowned Aeneas' friend, Deicoon Pergasides, whom all the Trojans loved, as he were one of Priam's sons. His mind was so approved, in always fighting with the first, the lance his target took, which could not interrupt the blow that through it clearly strook, and in his belly's rim was sheathed, beneath his girdle stead. He sounded falling, and his arms with him resounded dead. Then fell two princes of the Greeks by great Aeneas' ire, Diocles' sons, Orsilochus and Crethon, whose kind sire in bravely built Phyra dwelt, rich and of sacred blood. He was descended lineally from great Alpheus' flood, that broadly flows through Pyle's fields. Alpheus did beget Orsilochus, who in the rule of many men was set, and that Orsilochus begat the rich Diocles. Diocles sire to Crethon was, and this Orsilochus. Both these, arrived at man's estate, with both the Atrides went, to honor them in the Iliad wars, and both were one day sent to death as well as Troy, for death hid both in one black hour, as two young lions with their dam sustained but to devour, bred on the tops of some steep hill, and in the gloomy deep of an inaccessible wood rushed out and preyed on sheep, steers, oxen, and destroyed men's stalls, so long that they come short, and by the owner's steel are slain in such unhappy sort. Fell these beneath Aeneas's power, when Menelaus viewed, like two tall fir trees these two fall, their timeless falls he rued, and to the first fight where they lay, a vengeful force he took. His arms beat back the sun in flames, a dreadful lance he shook. Mars put the fury in his mind, that by Aeneas's hands, who was to make the slaughter good, he might have strewed the sands. And Telemachus, old Nestor's son, observing he was bent to urge a combat of such odds, and knowing the event, being ill on his part, all their pains alone sustained for him, ere from their end made after hard, and took them in the trim of an encounter. Both their hands and darts advanced, and shook, and both pitched in full stand of charge, when suddenly the look of Anchises took note of Nestor's valiant son, in full charge too, which 2-to-1 made Venus's issue shun the haunted venture, though he were a soldier well approved. Then drew they off their slaughtered friends, who given to their beloved, they turned where fight showed the deadliest hate, and there mixed with the dead Pylaemon, that the targeteers of Paphlagonia led, a man like Mars, and with him fell good Medon, that did guide his chariot, Atimnus' son. The prince Pylaemon died by Menelaus. Nestor's joy slew Medon, one before the other in the chariot. Atrides' lance did gore Pylaemon's shoulder in the blade, and Telemachus did force a mighty stone up from the earth, and as he turned his horse, struck Medon's elbow in the midst. The reins of ivory fell from his hands into the dust, and Telemachus let fly his sword withal, and rushing in, a blow so deadly laid upon his temples that he groaned, tumbled to earth, and stayed a mighty while preposterously, because the dust was deep upon his neck and shoulder there, even till his foe took keep of his prized horse, and made them stir, and then he prostrate fell. His horse Antilochus took home. When Hector had heard tell, amongst the uproar of their deaths, he laid out all his voice, and ran upon the Greeks. Behind came many men of choice, before him marched great Mars himself, matched with his female mate, the dread Bellona. She brought on, to fight for mutual fate, the tumult that was wild and mad. He shook a horrid lance, and now led Hector, and anon behind would make the chance. This sight, when great Tydides saw, his hair stood up on end, and him, whom all the skill and power of arms did lay to tend, now like a man in counsel poor, that travelling goes amiss, and having passed a boundless plain, not knowing where he is, comes on the sudden where he sees a river rough and raves, with his own billows ravished into the king of waves, murmurs with foam, and frights him back, so he amazed retired, and thus would make good his amaze. O friends, we all admired great Hector, as one of himself, well darting bold in war, when some god guards him still from death, and makes him dare so far. Now Mars himself, formed like a man, is present in his rage, and therefore whatsoever cause importunes you to wage war with these Trojans, never strive, but gently take your rod, lest in your bosoms for a man ye ever find a god. As Greece retired, the power of Troy did much more forward prease, and Hector 2 brave men of war sent to the fields of peace. Menestheus and Anchialus, one chariot bare them both. Their falls made Ajax Telamon ruthful of heart and wroth, who lightened out a lance that smote Amphius Selagus, that dwelt in Pisos, rich in lands, and did huge goods possess. But fate to Priam and his sons conducted his supply. The javelin on his girdle struck, and pierced mortally. His belly's lower part he fell. His arms had looks so trim that Ajax needs would prove their spoil. The Trojans poured on him whole storms of lances, large and sharp, of which a number stuck in his rough shield. Yet from the slain he did his javelin pluck, but could not from his shoulders force the arms he did affect. The Trojans with such drifts of darts the body did protect, and wisely Telamonius feared their valorous defence. So many and so strong of hand stood in with such expense of deadly prowess, who repelled, though big, strong, bold he were, the famous Ajax, and their friend did from his rapture bear. Thus this place filled with strength of fight in the army's other priests, Tlepolemus, a tall big man, the son of Hercules, a cruel destiny inspired, with strong desire to prove, and counter with Sarpedon's strength, the son of cloudy Jove, who coming on to that stern end had chosen him his foe. Thus Jove's great nephew and his son gainst one another go. Tlepolemus, to make his end more worth the will of fate, began as if he had her power, and showed the mortal state of too much confidence in man, with this superfluous brave. Sarpedon, what necessity or needless humour drave thy form to these wars, which in heart I know thou dost abhor? A man not seen in deeds of arms, a Lycian counsellor? They lie that call thee son to Jove, since Jove bred none so late. The men of elder times were they, that his high power begat. Such men as had Herculean force. My father Hercules was Jove's true issue. He was bold, his deeds did well express. They sprung out of a lion's heart. He whilom came to Troy, for horse that Jupiter gave Tros, for Ganymede his boy, with 6 ships only, and few men, and tore the city down, left all her broad ways desolate, and made the horse his own. For thee, thy mind is ill disposed, thy body's powers are poor, and therefore are thy troops so weak. The soldier evermore follows the temper of his chief, and thou pull'st down aside. But say thou art the son of Jove, and hast thy means supplied with forces fitting his descent. The powers that I compel shall throw thee hence, and make thy head run ope the gates of hell. Jove's Lycian issue answered him, Tlepolemus, 'tis true, thy father holy Ilion in that sort overthrew. The injustice of the king was cause, that where thy father had used good deservings to his state, he quitted him with bad. Asyone, the joy and grace of King Laomedon, thy father rescued from a whale, and gave to Telamon in honoured nuptials. Telamon, from whom your strongest Greek boasts to have issued, and this grace might well expect the like. Yet he gave taunts for thanks, and kept against his oath his horse, and therefore both thy father's strength and justice might enforce the wreak he took on Troy. But this and thy cause differ far. Sons seldom heir their father's worths. Thou canst not make his war. What thou assumest for him is mine, to be on thee imposed. With this he threw an ashen dart, and then Tlepolemus loosed another from his glorious hand. Both at one instant flew, both struck, both wounded. From his neck Sarpedon's javelin drew the lifeblood of Tlepolemus. Full in the midst it fell, and what he threatened the other gave, that darkness and that hell. Sarpedon's left thigh took the lance, it pierced the solid bone, and with his raging head ran through, but Jove preserved his son. The dart yet vexed him bitterly, which should have been pulled out. but none considered then so much, so thick came on the rout, and filled each hand so full of cause to ply his own defence. 'Twas held enough, both fallen that both were nobly carried thence. Ulysses knew the events of both, and took it much to heart, that his friend's enemy should scape, and in a twofold part his thoughts contended, if he should pursue Sarpedon's life, or take his friend's wreak on his men. Faith did conclude this strife, by whom 'twas otherwise decreed that Ulysses' steel should end Sarpedon. In this doubt Minerva took the wheel from fickle chance, and made his mind resolve to right his friend with that blood he could surest draw. Then did Revenge extend her full power on the multitude. Then did he never miss Alastor, Halius, Chromius, Noemon, Prytanis, Alcander, and a number more he slew, and more had slain if Hector had not understood, whose power made in amain, and strook fear through the Grecian troops, but to Sarpedon gave hope of full rescue, who thus cried, O Hector, help and save my body from the spoil of Greece, that to your loved town my friends may see me borne, and then let earth possess her own in this soil, for whose sake I left my countries, for no day shall ever show me that again, nor to my wife display, and young hope of my name, the joy of my much thirsted sight. All which I left for Troy. For them let Troy then do this right. To all this Hector gives no word, but greedily he strives with all speed to repel the Greeks, and shed in floods their lives, and left Sarpedon. But what face soever he put on, of following the common cause, he left this prince alone, for his particular grudge, because so late he was so plain in his reproof before the host, and that did he retain. However, for example's sake, he would not show it then, and for his shame too, since 'twas just. But good Sarpedon's men ventured themselves, and forced him off, and set him underneath the goodly beech of Jupiter, where now they did unsheath the ashen lance, strong Pelagon, his friend, most loved, most true, and forced it from his maimed thigh, with which his spirit flew. And darkness overflew his eyes, yet with a gentle gale, that round about the dying prince cool Boreas did exhale. He was revived, recomforted, that else had grieved and died. All this time flight drave to the fleet the Argives, who applied no weapon 'gainst the proud pursuit, nor ever turned ahead. They knew so well that Mars pursued, and dreadful Hector led. Then who was first, who last, whose lives the iron Mars did seize? And Priam's Hector? Helenus, surnamed Enopides, good Teuthras, and Orestes, skilled in managing of horse, bold Enomaus, and a man renowned for martial force, Tricas, the great Aetolian chief, or Resbius, that did wear the gaudy mitre, studied wealth extremely, and dwelt near the Atlantic lake Caphasides in Hyla, by whose seat the good men of Boeotia dwelt. This slaughter grew so great, it flew to heaven. Saturnia discerned it, and cried out to Pallas, O unworthy sight, to see a field so fought, and break our words to Sparta's king, that Ilion should be raced, and he return revenged, when thus we see his Greeks disgraced, and bear the harmful rage of Mars. Come, let us use our care, that we dishonor not our powers. Minerva was as yare as she at the despite of Troy. Her golden bridled steeds then Saturn's daughter brought aboard, and Hebe she proceeds to address her chariot. Instantly she gives it either wheel, beamed with 8 spokes of sounding brass. The axle tree was steel, the felfs incorruptible gold, their upper bands of brass, their matter most unvalued, their work of wondrous grace. The naves in which the spokes were driven were all with silver bound, the chariot seat 2 hoops of gold and silver strengthened round, edged with a gold and silver fringe. The beam that looked before was massy silver, on whose top gears all of gold it wore, and golden poitrels. Juno mounts, and her hot horses reined, that thirsted for contention, and still of peace complained. Minerva wrapped her in the robe that curiously she wove, with glorious colors, as she sate on the azure floor of Jove, and wore the arms that he puts on, bent to the tearful field. About her broad spread shoulders hung his huge and horrid shield, fringed round with ever-fighting snakes. Through it was drawn to life the miseries and deaths of fight. In it frowned bloody strife. In it shined sacred fortitude. In it fell pursuit flew. In it the monster Gorgon's head, in which held out to view were all the dire ostents of Jove. On her big head she placed his four-plumed glittering casque of gold, so admirably vast, it would 100 garrisons of soldiers comprehend. Then to her shining chariot her vigorous feet ascend, and in her violent hand she takes his grave, huge solid lance, with which the conquest of her wrath she useth to advance, and overturn whole fields of men, to show she was the seed of him that thunders. Then heaven's queen, to urge her horses' speed, takes up the scourge, and forth they fly. The ample gates of heaven rung, and flew open of themselves, the charge whereof is given, with all Olympus and the sky, to the distinguished hours, that clear or hide it all in clouds, or pour it down in showers. This way their scourge-obeying horse made haste, and soon they won the top of all the topful heavens, where aged Saturn's son sat severed from the other gods. Then stayed the white-armed queen her steeds, and asked of Jove if Mars did not incense his spleen with his foul deeds, in ruining so many and so great, in the command and grace of Greece, and in so rude a heat. At which she said, Apollo laughed, and Venus, who still sue to that mad god for violence that never justice knew, for whose impiety she asked if with his wished love herself might free the field of him. He bade her rather move Athenia to the charge she sought, who'd used of old to be the bane of Mars, and had as well the gift of spoil as he. This grace she slacked not, but her horse scourged, that in nature flew betwixt the cope of stars and earth, and how far at a view a man into the purple sea may from a hill descry, so far a high neighing horse of heaven at every jump would fly. Arrived at Troy, where broke in curls the two floods mixed their force, Scamander and bright Simois, Saturnia stayed her horse, took them from chariot, and a cloud of mighty depth diffused about them, and the verdant banks of Simois produced in nature what they eat in heaven. Then both the goddesses marched like a pair of timorous doves, in hasting their excess to the Argive succor. Being arrived where both the most and best were heaped together, showing all like lions at a feast of new slain carcasses, or boars beyond encounter strong. There found they Diomed, and there, midst all the admiring throng, Saturnia put on Stentor's shape, that had a brazen voice, and spake as loud as 50 men, like whom she made a noise, and chid the Argives, O ye Greeks, in name and outward right, but princes only, not in act. What scandal, what despite, use ye to honor? All the time the great Aeacides was conversant in arms. Your foes durst not a foot address without their ports, so much they feared his lance, that all controlled, and now they outrage to your fleet. This did with shame make bold the general spirit and power of Greece, when with particular note of their disgrace Athenia made Tydeus' issue hot. She found him at his chariot, refreshing of his wound, inflected by slain Pandarus, his sweat did so abound. it much annoyed him underneath the broad belt of his shield, with which, and tired with his toil, his soul could hardly yield his body motion. With his hand he lifted up the belt, and wiped away the clottered blood, the fervent wound did melt. Minerva leaned against his horse, and near their withers laid her sacred hand, then spake to him, Believe me, Diomed, Tydeus exampled not himself, in thee his son not great, but yet he was a soldier, a man of so much heat, that in his embassy for Thebes, when I forbade his mind to be too venturous, and when feasts his heart might have declined, with which they welcomed him, he made a challenge to the best, and foiled the best. I gave him aid, because the rust of rest that would have seized another mind, he suffered not, but used the trial I made like a man, and their soft feasts refused. Yet when I set thee on, thou faint'st. I guard thee, charge, exhort, that I abetting thee thou shouldst be to the Greeks a fort, and a dismay to Ilion, yet thou obey'st not. Afraid or slothful, or else both, henceforth renounce all thought, that ever thou wert Tydeus' son. He answered her, I know thou art Jove's daughter, and for that in all just duty owe thy speeches reverence, yet affirm ingenuously that fear doth neither hold me spiritless nor sloth. I only bear thy charge in zealous memory, that I should never war with any blessed deity, unless, exceeding far the limits of her rule, the queen that governs chamber sport should press to field, and her thy will enjoin my lance to hurt. But he whose power hath right in arms I knew in person here, beside the Cyprian deity, and therefore did forbear. And here have gathered in retreat these other Greeks you see, with note and reverence of your charge. My dearest mind, said she, what then was fit is changed. 'Tis true, Mars hath just rule in war, but just war, otherwise he raves, not fights, he's altered far. He vowed to Juno and myself that his aid should be used against the Trojans, whom it guards, and therein he abused his rule in arms, infringed his word, and made his war unjust. He is inconstant, impious, mad. Resolve then, firmly trust my aid of thee against his worst, or any deity. Add scourge to thy free horse, charge home, he fights perfidiously. This said, as that brave king, her knight, with his horse guiding friend, were set before the chariot, for sign he should descend, that she might serve for wagoness, she plucked the wagoner back, and up into his seat she mounts. The beechen tree did crack beneath the burthen, and good cause it bore so huge a thing, a goddess so replete with power, and such a puissant king. She snatched the scourge up and the reins, and shut her heavenly look in hell's vast helm from Mars's eyes, and full career she took at him, who then had newly slain the mighty Periphas, renowned son to Ochesius, and far the strongest was of all the Aetolians, to whose spoil the bloody god was run. But when this man-plague saw the approach of godlike Tydeus' son, he let his mighty Periphas lie, and in full charge he ran at Diomed, and he at him, both near the god began, and thirsty of his blood he throws a brazen lance that bears full on the breast of Diomed, above the reins and gears. But Pallas took it on her hand, and strook the eager lance beneath the chariot. Then the knight of Pallas doth advance, and cast a javelin off at Mars. Minerva sent it on, that where his arming girdle gilt, his belly grazed upon, just at the rim, and wranched the flesh. The lance again he got, but left the wound that stung him so. He laid out such a throat, as if 9 or 10,000 men had brayed out all their breaths, in one confusion, having felt as many sudden deaths. The roar made both the hosts amazed. Up flew the god to heaven, and with him was through all the air as black a tincture driven to Diomedes' eyes, as when the earth, half choked with smoking heat of gloomy clouds that stifle men, and pitchy tempests threat, ushered with horrid gusts of wind, with such black vapors plumed, Mars flew to Olympus and broad heaven, and there his place resumed. Sadly he went, and sat by Jove, showed his immortal blood, that from a mortal man-made wound poured such an impious flood, and weeping poured out these complaints. O Father, storm'st thou not to see us take these wrongs from men? Extreme griefs we have got, even by our own deep counsels, held for gratifying them. And thou, our council's president, concludest in this extreme, of fighting ever, being ruled by one that thou hast bred, one never well, but doing ill, a girl so full of head, that though all other gods obey, her mad moods must command, by thy indulgence, nor by word, nor any touch of hand, correcting her. Thy reason is she is a spark of thee, and therefore she may kindle rage in men 'gainst gods, and she may make men hurt gods, and those gods that are besides thy seed. First in the palms hit Cyprides, then runs the impious deed on my hurt person, and could life give way to death in me, or had my feet not fetched me off, heaps of mortality had kept me consort. Jupiter, with a contracted brow, thus answered Mars, Thou many minds, inconstant changeling thou, sit not complaining thus by me, who most of all the gods, inhabiting the starry hill, I hate, no periods being set to thy contentions, brawls, fights, and pitching fields, just of thy mother Juno's moods, stiff-necked and never yields, though I correct her still in chide, nor can forbear offence, through to her son, this wound I know taste of her insolence, but I will prove more natural. Thou shalt be cured because thou comest of me, but hadst thou been so cross to sacred laws, being born to any other god, thou hadst been thrown from heaven long since, as low as Tartarus, beneath the giants driven. This said, he gave his wound in charge to Paeon, who applied such sovereign medicines that as soon the pain was qualified, and he recured, as nourishing milk, when runnet is put in, runs all in heaps of tough thick curd, though in his nature thin. Even so soon his wound's parted sides ran close in his recure, for he, all deathless, could not long the parts of death endure. Then Hebe bathed and put on him fresh garments, and he sate, exulting by his sire again, in top of all his state. So having from the spoils of men made his desired remove, Juno and Pallas reascend the starry court of Jove. End of the 5th book, Part 2.